Hey everybody, it's Derek with the Ultimate Hang, and I had a couple people ask me about, how do I cut a sleeping pad and use it in a hammock to really optimize it. So I went ahead and bought a brand new pad. We're gonna cut this guy up, we're gonna destroy it, but we're gonna show you how to use it effectively in a camping hammock. So let's go. Okay, listen, I'm gonna be honest. Pads are not ideal for hammock camping. I mean, really, pads, I almost want to say they suck, but they can be okay. I mean, yes, you can use pads in hammocks. They're just not great. And the reason is because pads, they're designed to lay completely flat, and they don't curve and bend like a hammock can. So hammocks, they mold to your body, and they can bend and curve and crease where they need to, but a pad doesn't. So sometimes a pad can just simply be uncomfortable. But let me talk about some pros and cons for using a hammock. If you want to skip to the tip, jump to the end of the video. We'll show you how to do this and cut it up. If you like this tip, be sure to like the video, subscribe, and click that other button where you get notifications, right? So you know what's happening. All right. So let's talk about some pros. Number one, pads are inexpensive. They're really cheap. I bought this pad for about 15 bucks. You can sometimes get them for cheaper. You may even have one laying around. Pads are a great way to stay warm when you don't have anything else. And speaking about warmth, pads have a great warmth to weight ratio. In other words, they're pretty lightweight for how much warmth they can provide. So for that's a big plus. You're packing less, but you're still staying warm. Another great benefit of a pad is they're multi-use. You can use them on the ground, you can put them in a hammock, you can use them as a sit pad. So they have lots of uses around the camp besides just sleeping. So it really can be a toss-up wondering like, hey, this is inexpensive, I can afford it, it's warm, and I can use it in lots of ways. So if that works for you, then pads might be an option. And you want to think about these tips later on how to really use it effectively. All right, so let's talk about some cons. They don't conform to the curvature of a hammock, and you might find that creates kinks and creases that can be uncomfortable, especially under your legs and sometimes around the curvature of your back. And speaking of your back, pads are not that wide. So I don't know if you can see this, 20 inches. If I just lay it in front of me, you can see that it barely covers just my shoulders, which if I'm on the ground, it's totally fine. But as we're gonna see later in my tip, when you're in a hammock and it's curving around you, I'm gonna have places around the sides of my shoulders that aren't gonna be fully covered, and that's where pads tend to be not as effective in keeping you warm. Pads don't compress. I mean, especially pads like this, closed-celled foam pads. You've gotta find a place to store this, and they take up a lot of room. All right, last thing I wanna mention is, are there any times when I would really need to use a pad, or when would I commonly use a pad? This window shade from a car, I have used this before. You can see this is quite a bit wider than a sleeping pad. So this actually does a great job of wrapping around your shoulders all by itself. So in an emergency, I've used one of these before. They work great in keeping you warm. Also a very inexpensive option. In fact, this is, I think, cheaper than a pad, come to think of it. And it packs down a little bit smaller. The other time that I really use a pad is under my legs. I'm a lightweight hammock camper. I like to try to minimize the amount of weight and bulk that I take when I go camping. And so when I typically camp, I have a shorter underquilt, which covers basically from my shoulders down to my knees. And it's a great way to stay warm in the essential areas because my legs don't need as much insulation. And so I may use a small closed-celled foam pad like this, or maybe even a small inflatable sit pad like this under my legs. So those are places where I today still use a pad, but in very small ways, right? Let's go ahead and start the surgery. So now I've got two pads. The real trick here is just putting one pad under my torso where I need the most warmth, and then the other pad is turned sideways to give me extra coverage around my shoulders and torso. It has a natural curve to it already. So I'm gonna put one up here under my shoulders. The other one is gonna be turned sideways. So So I've got my 2 pads, and I have one here for my torso, and the other one's gonna be sideways. What I recommend is putting the torso pad, or I would call it the butt pad, right? This is my butt and leg pad. So I'm gonna just sit in this. And that way it kind of keeps this butt pad in place. I can really just put this wherever I want. And then the kind of upper torso pad is what goes behind me. Just like that. Now, in terms of fiddling with this, because they're overlapping a little bit, my body pressure is keeping it in place, but it's really pretty easy to make those adjustments. And you can see now, I've got plenty of coverage on either side of my shoulder. Makes it really warm around my shoulders, so I don't have to worry about that. And now I've got sun in my eyes. There we go. Now we're nap time. Hey everybody, thanks again for watching. Thanks so much for following me and subscribing to the channel. And thanks for the questions. If you guys have more questions or want to see a demo some of the tips and tricks for hammock camping, please let me know in the comments below and we'll be sure to answer them. Anyways, thanks you guys for watching. We'll see you next time.